So we're just finishing up now talking about lipoproteins in the blood. So I wanted to talk about the 4 different types of lipoproteins: the chylomicrons, the VLDLs, the LDL, and the HDL. And it shows what the primary components are and what the major function is. And what I want to point out in here is the difference between these two, the LDL. This is the one that we kind of note as that bad cholesterol, because this carries cholesterol made in the liver from other sources to the cells. So what this does is this carries that cholesterol to other cells. What HDL does, on the other hand, is exactly the opposite. It contributes to the cholesterol remover of from the cells. So I look at this as kind of like a scavenger of cholesterol, where this deposits the cholesterol. So having high levels of HDL, and this is the good cholesterol, and the way I remember that is H for high, H for happy. So this you typically want to have levels above 60, and the LDL you want to have levels that are low, because this is lousy, under 100. So again, just to review some of the differences in the dietary and fats found in the body. The fats that are found in a meal are found in the source of triglycerides. Basically, through digestion, we package them into chylomicrons in the intestine and send those chylomicrons out into the cells. The lipids that are collected or made by the liver deliver fatty acids to the cells, and then the LDL takes that cholesterol right to the cells. And this is the ones that we want to be low, where ultimately the cholesterol that arises from dying cells, we want that HDL to pick it up. So let's talk a little bit about factors that affect the HDL levels. And again, HDL is beneficial because it removes cholesterol in the blood. It also blocks the breakdown of the bad cholesterol and thus may reduce the risk of cardiovascular disease. So the scavenger cells, those white blood cells, scavenger cells, also help remove some of that that LDL. So that's a benefit too. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the functions of fatty acids. So in general, the main function is to provide a concentrated source of energy, and thus the 9 calories per gram is what we typically received from eating fats. It's also a very efficient way of storing energy. In our body, we have about probably 1,500 calories worth of glycogen, which is our form of carbohydrate, stored in our liver and our muscles, where we can have about 80,000 calories stored in our triglyceride or our adipose tissue. One of the benefits is to insulate and protect the body. We have a lot of fat around our internal organs. We use it to transport a lot of our fat-soluble vitamins. Part of fats are in our cell membrane, and then we need cholesterol because they become part of our hormones. So again, this is that picture I've shown a couple times, but it shows the cell membrane, and then if you look more detailed, you'll see that it's both a fat and a lipid. So how much fat do we need to eat? Well, it's not that fat is so terrible for us. It actually can be beneficial. We recommend about 20 to 35% of our calories come from fat. What's important is the amount of the type that we choose. So we want to limit the intake of saturated and trans fat and maximize that of poly and mono. And again, in the healthy objectives of 2020, we want to reduce the intake of saturated fat to 9% of calorie intake. But if you look here at the American Heart Association recommendations, they really want that saturated fat to be less than 7. And right now it's over 10. So Americans are eating too much saturated fat, which really shows they're eating too much animal proteins. Fat intake can be high as long as the saturated and the trans fats are minimal. That's really important. Obviously, eating plenty of fruits and vegetables are beneficial for all the phytochemicals, the fiber, the vitamins. Cut down on red meats. Those are saturated fat. Cut down on simple sugars and refined carbs. All of these are really helpful components. This helps, gives you some tips for avoiding too much. And I know that this is a very detailed concept map, but I think that it's important because I want you to see how these fats and lipids kind of break apart. So again, triglycerides, the main form of fat in the food or the body. Okay, so fatty acids are the building blocks of triglycerides. And those fatty acids can either be saturated or unsaturated. The unsaturated ones typically are either poly, which are fish or plant, or mono, which is like in olive oil. Of those polyunsaturated fats, there's the omega-3s found in fish and the omega-6s found in plants. Okay, when we talk about phospholipids, this is the lipid bilayer in the cell membrane. When we talk about sterols, we're talking about cholesterol, which is used to make hormones, bile, vitamin D, and that's the roles. So again, the 4 types of lipids are triglycerides, phospholipids, sterols, and fatty acids. So let's talk a little bit more about cardiac disease. It's the leading cause of death in North America. And what we really know is that it has a huge component that is related to nutrition. And what it has to do with is this plaquey buildup that results from inflammation happening and cholesterol and fatty buildup inside the artery wall. And so what happens is eventually it becomes so large that the red blood cells can't get through. And so again, this shows you kind of an idea of what that cholesterol plaque, and it's not just plaque like when you think of like plaque on your teeth, but it's also that this area of the vessel is inflamed. So what are some of the risk factors? Having a high blood cholesterol is a risk factor, although less than 50% of people who have heart disease have an elevated cholesterol. So it's not the only predictor. Smoking is a huge predictor, high blood pressure, diabetes. If you have a low, good cholesterol level, that can be a risk factor because that HDL is not cleaning up the dead cholesterol. As we age, if you have a strong family history, if you have a lot of fat floating in your blood, obesity is a huge risk factor, especially when that fat is found around the waist. And then inactivity. I'm going to skip through some of these. So from a health perspective, how do we lower our LDL? We reduce our dietary saturated fat, and this should also say trans fats, and we increase our mono and also increase our soluble fiber, which we learned about last week. And then raising our HDL has less to do with dietary intake and more to do with lifestyle. So it really is about physical activity, cessation of smoking, eating regularly, so not eating huge meals one time a day, but 3 to 4 smaller meals, and then moderate intakes of alcohol can actually help increase your HDL as well. Sorry, going backwards. Okay, so again, this gives you some idea about where your LDL should be, and what we like LDL to be is lower than 100. Okay, so there's some surgical treatments for cardiac disease. We won't really cover those, but the thing that I want to end with is the importance of choosing a diet, of course, that you've heard from this class, high in fruits and vegetables, high in whole grains, addition of that fish for the omega-3 fats, and minimizing the processed and fried foods so you can minimize those hydrogenated fats. Okay, thank you.